Hello, I'm Dr. Miller. Welcome to Healing Times. Today we're here with Marilyn Nyborg, who's going to share a little bit of her journey with us, and in particular we'll learn something about an organization called Gather the Women, and also an organization called Women Waking the World. Welcome to Healing Times, Marilyn.
Thank you, Emmett. It's nice to be here.
So maybe you could start. Gather the Women's been around for
8 years.
For 8 years now.
Uh-huh.
So tell us just a little bit about what Gather the Women is.
Well, Gather the Women is just what it sounds like. We gather women. And we do that for the purposes of connecting women, for inspiration, for collaboration, for networking, for motivation, to help them to in any way we can to support their voice being brought to the world. And in many ways we're also there to support the activists whose voices are already being heard, but need sometimes, safe space and healing space. Mm-hmm. So we're there for that as well. And we do that in a number of ways. One of our big ones is once a year, on March 8th, we celebrate International Women's Day in a rather unique fashion. We don't just look at our history as women, we're actually looking at who we are right now and what is needed in the world, and then how can we together bring that forward. It is a deeply developing sisterhood.
Mm-hmm. When you say the history of women, you mean the history of womankind?
Well, yes. It's basically, there's Women's History Month, for example, and it goes back and talks about the suffragettes and all the wonderful things that have happened through time. We certainly appreciate and acknowledge that, but our celebration of International Women's Day is to celebrate ourselves right now in current time. And we also do that through other activities, ongoing activities. We recently in our area had we showed a film, and will be kind of a film festival throughout the year. And it was called Pray the Devil Back to Hell, which was totally inspiring and wonderful about the Liberian women who really took their country back and stopped the war. So that's the kind of thing we want to infuse in women. And boy, the energy when you get a group of women together, you never know what's going to come out of it, which is wonderful. My friend always says when women come together, wonderful things happen. So Gather the Women provides that space, safe space. We also create women's circles, so we invite them into ongoing circles where they can be both, it could be for inspiration. The circle could be a project circle, could be a study circle, collaborations, a circle around common interests. And we encourage women to have that circle support.
So it's a way for women to be active in a certain way, isn't it?
And supported. Both. Both, to be active and supported.
And how did you happen to become associated with it? A little bit about your history.
Well, strangely enough, first of all, I think I've been sitting in circle for at least 50 years. No, I'm cheating. It must be 35 years of sitting in circle with women. And I have always found the benefit of that, to support and to be seen. And I think we all need to be seen. And so that's been an important part of my life. And about 8 years ago, I connected with a woman in the Bay Area to say, how can we use the internet to bring all of these women's circles and women's gatherings and women's groups together? And she basically said, someone's doing that and I've got a better idea. What she said was that she had just done a conference with women where many had come up to her to say, Carol, it's time that we gather the women. So Carol Hansen Gray was sort of the initiator of this idea, and she said, well, let's meet. So I drove to the Bay Area and met with women I had never met before, and I think there were about 12 of us. And we came together to say, so what is Gather the Women? I mean, we know it has a call. It's calling us. What are we being called to? And of course, we went to the usual list, which included, poverty and abuse but for all of those, there are wonderful activities already going on. There are already organizations that are already addressing those issues. So I just said, well, who's addressing the heart and soul of a woman? Who are we? How can we come together? What do we need to be doing for and with one another? And so that kind of, that began to spark, and we were working in such a beautifully collaborative way. All of the writings that came out of those early meetings are really quite lovely in speaking of who and what Gather the Women is about.
So when you say looking at the heart and soul of a woman, in what way would you proceed to do that that's different from looking for the heart and soul of a person or of a man?
Good question. Good question. We have been overlooked for the most part in history, which has been written by men, and they've written of their experience. And we are now realizing that we also had an experience. Some of it was lost in history. Some of it is being reclaimed in history. And it's looking at who we are. And then we get into another whole conversation about the repression of that which is feminine in the world. And we move into that area. I'm almost ready to move to my other group because that's what that is really dealing with. So do you want to do that?
Well, so with gathering the women, so how many are in that group now?
We have about, I would say, a database of over 10,000 worldwide, which is really lovely. And I've had the most wonderful experience of being able to communicate with women and have met wonderful women, the African women, the Australian women. And now we're hearing more from European women. Which is really lovely, and asking us, what are you doing, and how can we share our needs, and how can we support one another. So it's all about relationships. So we've also developed a lot of personal relationships through our website and through connecting with those women around the world, and just delighted about that.
And different groups have been involved in different projects? Or
well,
creative?
We're not project-oriented. We are really event-oriented or circle-oriented, if you will. As Gather the Women, the purpose is to bring women together, to inspire and activate. It is not, the doing is not done in Gather the Women, which is a very strange way it's an interesting description because it's not how most organizations work. I think we've worked very differently. And we have now somewhere around 30 or 40 women across the United States who we call our regional coordinators. And we have one right here in Nevada County, where we're from. And the regional coordinators get on the phone once a month and they talk about the various ways in which they have found to bring women together. And sometimes that's through collaborating with other women's organizations, conferences, and etc. Yeah.
And you've described this as being a kind of spiritually inspired activism?
Absolutely. It's coming from the heart. Well, it means that we are aware that there is a greater purpose, that there is a greater connection, and we don't narrow it down to a specific religion or a particular cause. We're saying that women, I think women need to be seen and heard everywhere. And so we encourage women to do that, and we give them the forum to do that. But coming from heart is not coming from, it's coming from service and not from ego.
I was just reading today that feminist movement happened and it's over. Isn't that true from the 60s? What happened?
Well, I think we had a different feminist movement in the 60s. We had a different need in the 60s. And I think that what has grown out of that, we certainly stand on the shoulders of what they accomplished without any question. And now we have time to go to the heart of it. And it's interesting because I attended the 1975, of course I was only 4 at the time, but I attended that conference that the UN held, first one, the UN Conference on the Status of Women. And there we heard women really fighting for rights, fighting to be heard, and a lot of fighting, actually. And but it was an incredible conference to bring women from all over the world. They had the pleasure of standing in front of Mother Teresa back then. But the movement has changed a lot. Women have gained a great deal. But we've also incorporated a great deal of the patriarchal model of how we should be in the world.
Which is?
Which is, a dominance over, which is separation, and more narrow focus. Women at heart are more globally. There's a good reason why in Haiti they're giving the food to the women. We feed everyone. And the men weren't feeding everyone. They were selling it or they were holding on to it. So it's just like a man. Don't take that personally, because we realize that it is, that's a patriarchal culture allows that dominance to occur, and the repression of women and all that things that are feminine. So we are really wanting to honor all things feminine in both men and women.
And that, what you call the patriarchal model is what I call the old paradigm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mode of thinking where you're looking at differences, you're looking at black and white, separation.
Absolutely, well described.
Gain for us, and with little concern about someone else.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Which misses a whole piece of the world.
Huge. Like at least half the world, and then that other part of men too.
Well, and it's to me, you know, I find it's about machines. The machines have really taken over.
Yeah.
You know, I remember back in the 50s and 60s, there were science fiction shows about the robots taking over and controlling the human beings.
Right. Right.
Oh, okay. Well, it's actually happened.
It's happened.
But it's not robots moving down the street. It's much more subtle than that.
It's called corporate mindsets and...
That's it.
Yeah.
And machine think,
Yeah.
so that things are being done that machines understand.
Yeah.
And machines only understand black and white,
Absolutely.
0 and 1.
Yeah. Exactly.
When I first started studying computers in 1962 at this point, we had two kinds of computers, an analog computer and a digital computer. And we would sometimes work in one mode and sometimes in the other mode.
Yeah.
But the digital computer was far more capable of doing the kinds of calculations that made money.
And they were very exacting as well.
And very exact.
And focused.
And so nobody paid attention to the analog computer.
Isn't that interesting? It's a great analogy.
And so and the computer, of course, is simply the projection of one hemisphere of the brain. That's why the computer is so similar to our brains.
Exactly.
It's because we've projected out basically the left cortex, the one that's associated with the patriarchal model, that's about analysis, as opposed to the other side that has qualities, that it's not black or white, but there's a spectrum of color between black and white, and that is as important, at least, as the analytical 0 or 1. And the new paradigm means looking at both of those. And certainly women have, since the beginning of time, I would say, been the repository for that essence that allows us to look at relationship, because it's about what do we share. That is, in what ways do we love each other?
And how will it impact others, not just myself? Yes. Well, you've given my whole theory here. But you know, basically, my mind went into several directions.